Good morning and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lovina Emah, and it's a beautiful day in the city of Lagos as we're here to discuss more on our economy and things affecting our economy. So this morning, we will discuss opportunities in global food security, a pressing issue affecting economies, communities, and lives worldwide. Now, this is a complex issue with far-reaching implications, but it also presents incredible opportunities for businesses and investors. Now, as we know, the world's population is projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050. I mean, that's huge, putting immense pressure on global food systems. Now, climate change, conflict, and economic stability these are the increasing challenges that have been affecting global food security. But amidst these complexities lies vast potential for innovation, investment, and growth. We are a growing global population, and with this rising incomes and changing diets, this means we need more food to be affordable, nutritious, and sustainable. Now, these three things are very key because we can't just eat anything. We need these food items to be able to nurture our bodies, to provide the growth that we need, both for children and adults. So it's a tall order, but it's also a very massive market. So from developing innovative agricultural technologies to improving food distribution networks, there is a whole world of possibilities waiting to be explored. So we'll be talking to an expert who is with us in the studio this morning, who is at the forefront of this revolution to discuss the latest trends, challenges, and potential rewards. So we'll be discussing global food security landscape, the challenges, trends, and projections, emerging markets, and the opportunities that exist in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and Europe. And also we'll talk about sustainable agricultural practices and technology to achieve these agricultural practices, irrigation, and crop management. And like I said, we have an expert guest in the studio to discuss these issues and also how to prevent food wastage. I mean, we experience that a lot, and logistics and the supply chain optimization. So whether you are a seasoned investor looking for the next big thing or simply curious about the future of food, join us after the break because we have got a fascinating show ahead. Thank you for staying tuned, and thank you for watching the program Market Insights. So this morning we have a guest in the studio to discuss the opportunities that exist in this global food security. And my guest, or rather our guest this morning, is Mr. David Achimugu. He's the president for CropLife Nigeria. So welcome to the program, Mr. David Achimugu.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you in our studios this morning, and you look great. What's that? The label right there on your suit. Can you tell us about it?
No, the logo here is green.
Okay.
So shows where my passion and my livelihood is.
Oh, that's good
in agriculture.
To hear. Okay. Yeah. So I guess everybody who is very passionate about crop life, they all have this logo.
Hopefully.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Thank you.
Now we're discussing the opportunities in global food security now. So what is global food security? Let's start with that first.
Okay, quite interesting. A lot of talks about global food security. But first of all, what is food security? How do we define it? What are we looking at? In food security, you are looking at a measure of food that is available and accessible by individuals. When you talk about food, it's not just the quantity, but also nutritious food that is available to individuals or that make up a country. And so that measure is what we are looking at as the food security. In other words, if you are looking at food security, you are looking at the food security quotient of a place or a country. How much food is available, how much food is accessible, how much food is, what's the stability in terms of this availability and accessibility. when you talk about the price, the quantity, the quality, and the mix of food that makes it balanced food for the individual. So that measure is what we refer to as food security, when you compare that measure from nation to nation. So when you are talking of global food security, you are now looking at the aggregate of food security quotients country by country, and you put it together, and then the average, you are looking at what is the global food security situation as at today, as it was last year, as it will be in projection.
Okay, well said. Yes, those are very key definitions you have given us there concerning food security. Now, as you know, let's first of all start with Nigeria now. Nigeria is facing a worsening food security, and according to the World Bank, there was a report on Nigeria that currently, as of August 2024, there's an additional 1 million people affected by this insecurity. And what is the cause of Nigeria's food insecurity?
Well, a lot of things are responsible, but we'll just pick the ones that we can really treat for now. One of the causes is the global price shock. What we mean by this is that the volatility in the commodity prices, okay? You now have, when you are looking at the global square, and when you come to Nigeria, it's about the same. Because you can imagine if you, without going to deep statistics, you can imagine that if you bought a tuber of yam sometime last year or early this year for maybe 1,000 or 1,500, and now you are the same tuber of yam, you need like 5,000, you need like 7,000, that's over 300% increase in price. So this is a shock. It's a shock not only to the market, to consumer, and it will affect, it's a serial effect, because that shock will go around the economy from you not being able to feed well or spending much money on food. Then you need to, your money to now on energy and things will be decreasing. So food security is affected by that. And then of course there is the increase in energy cost. When you are talking about food security in Nigeria, I'm trying to bring it down to our country. It's the same globally, by the way, but some countries are more affected than others. Okay, some countries have already prepared their shock absorbers, and so they could take it. But countries like us, like Nigeria, we look very unprepared before this came. So you can talk about the energy cost, for example, the diesel that will power the engine that will transport the food, for example. In those days, or let's say last year, if you put tomato trailer load from Kano to Lagos, probably you pay like 500,000. Today, 1.5. So it's 200, 300% increase. This will affect the cost of food. It will affect the availability of food to individuals and also the accessibility. We can go on and on. Then we can have, of course, the effect of all this is that the farm inputs prices will go up.
Okay, so, yes. These items, you have more to mention?
Yeah, multi-dimension. Okay. And, that's only on global prices. You have also some other factors. Yes, in Nigeria especially, insecurity is a major factor. Because farmers are not now are finding it difficult in certain areas, not the whole of the country. But if the effect is on the food belt of the country, then it reverberates more on the country than other places. So you find in these places, because of insecurity, it's now more difficult for them to access their farms. And even when they go, they cannot, time allocated has to be in tandem with the security challenges of the place. So it decreases the production and things like that. Then you have that insecurity also affects trade. Like I talked about tomato from Kano.
Can I please pause your thoughts for a bit now? Okay, now, according to this same report, I'm quoting from this report now, 18 countries have experienced worsening food security conditions, and this is Ethiopia, Nigeria, Yemen, and a few other countries all over the world. Now, the factors they mentioned responsible was climate change, and this has to do with extreme flooding and also droughts. Now, these cases are seen all over the world, but here in Nigeria, we have a meteorological center, so it's expected that these agencies should be able to inform farmers of, okay, this is the right time to plant crops, or this is not the right time to plant a crop. Now, as the president of CropLife Nigeria, I'm quite sure you speak to farmers on how to plant their crops at the right time to avoid being a victim of this excessive climate condition. So what would you advise our country, as has been listed as one of the 18 countries affected? So what would you advise us to do?
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, because CropLife Nigeria just finished launching a training program, a pilot training program, in collaboration with Extension Africa, that is an organization based in Kano. We just finished launching a program where we are going to do some training and sensitization of farmers and actors in the agricultural sector in 3 states, Kano, Kaduna, and Jigawa State, as pilot scheme. And what are we talking about? When you want to, one, you talk about the meteorological department. Yeah, it's good when the meteorological department will give us when it will start, when it will end, short rain, that's quite good information for farmers and for agricultural production. But the other side of it is that you need to be prepared. If you don't have the tools, you can do nothing. And what are these tools? You have to have the knowledge to manage what is coming. For example, if the meteorological information tells you that we'll not have more than 2-3 months of rainfall this year in certain regions, what then do you do? The farmers have to get seed that will be short duration on the field. Okay? The farmers then have to be sensitized that, look, take advantage of every drop of rain. As soon as rainfall starts, begin to go to the field. Don't wait, it's not like before. This information, this is what we call smart farming. Okay, this is what we call smart farming. And this is what we also, in explaining that smart farming, we are trying to sensitize and train on climate-friendly agriculture. In other words, you use the knowledge that is available, but this interpretation of these and the tools that farmers need are not within their reach. So somebody has to go in between.
Let's continue, sir.
Somebody has to go in between, and that's what we are trying to do, to fill the gap between that knowledge, between that technology that is available, to take it to the farmers in quantum and in such a way that the farmers can utilize. So that's the training we have just launched in Abuja. And as we are talking today, the training is going on in Kaduna State now. It started yesterday. And from there, we'll move to Kano and then to Jigawa.
Okay, are we going to take this training? I'm just asking now, to other parts of Nigeria, like in the southern part and the eastern part?
Yes. Once we have done this, then we evaluate. That's how we do our training. One, there's a monitoring group now. And then we evaluate the training so that as we are going to other regions, other places, we correct certain things and improve certain information depending on on what the response is from the trainees. Okay.
Okay, yes. And I want to ask you this question. We we always say our country is blessed with arable land, and it's not just in Nigeria, in other parts of Africa too. The land is very fertile for farming now. But an estimated 1.6 million hectares of land have been inundated, including over 342,000 hectares of cropland. Now, with this kind of situation, now how would this affect the crop output or the fruits that will be harvested from these types of lands, and how would it also affect farmers who are within this statistics that I mentioned?
If I get you right, you mean the pressure on the land?
Yes, yes.
I mean, how will it affect the crop food output?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, of course. Ordinarily, I mean, if we live without control, it will certainly affect. That it will affect, there's no doubt. But then that we are equipped to take the shock of that pressure, okay? That's where the outstanding or the approach should be. Okay, if then there is the pressure on the land is increasing, then all the tools that we need to increase intensive farming would then have to come into place. In other words, instead of doing rotational cropping, okay, because there may not be enough land to rotate everybody all around, then you have to do intensive farming. But that requires some technology, bringing some new technology. For example, if the land is this, then you need to look at what happens to the soil year to year on the same land. You need to replenish the soil. You need to manage the soil. Okay, so these are things that we look at. Then, of course, you need to vary what you plant even on the same soil. Okay, so and that is the gap. The problem that we have now is not that the technology is not there. The problem we have is that there is a gap between the technology and the producers and the farmers. So, and that is the gap we are trying to fill up. We are also calling on government to do the same, because we need the agricultural extension system to be able to carry the farmers on the same page with us if we have to increase productivity in agriculture, increase yield, and create more jobs and things in agriculture. Okay?
Okay, so a lot of education and enlightenment is needed.
Sensitization.
Urgently. Yes, a lot of sensitization. Now, what role can technology play in addressing these food challenges?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
A lot. Like I was just telling you, that launching we had in Abuja and we came back, there are many innovations, agricultural innovations. We have just talked about seed, for example. If there is a crop where seed has been developed that could maybe short duration, if we talk about things like cowpea, for example, 2 months on the field, you are beginning to 2 to 3 months, you are beginning to harvest. If that technology is available, the seeds are there. But the farmers in my village have not been sensitized, trained that this is available, these are the advantages, and there's a gap. The gap that should be filled by agricultural extension. We are trying to fill in from our own part, to do our own little part as a non-for-profit organization. We are partnering with people to do it. But there should be, we should look at reviving the policy of agricultural extension to take full advantage of technology. For example, now we are talking of, because if you talk of the inputs that go to the farm, you also talk about things like fertilizer, for example. You talk about things like crop protection products. You are using herbicides, you are using this. There are technologies you can use to reduce drudgery. You remember that why farmers of the old were marrying many wives is because they want to have more children, more free labor on the farm. But these days, it doesn't happen that way. And that will not lead to the increase in agricultural production that we are looking for. We have to adopt technology. If you use maybe 1 small liter of a product, it can serve the whole hectare of a farm, either for insect control or for weed control or for disease control. These are technologies that are available. But they need to be taken to the farmers in such doses that the farmers can absorb and can understand. And that's where we come in.
Okay, now, yes, thank you very much for that. Yes, we have seen definitely technology is important.
Oh,
definitely in the agricultural sector, and also to combat this global food security. Now, there still, if I may, let me quote from this report now, total floods and droughts have affected approximately 3.5 million people in these 18 countries that have been affected by this global food security. And that's in Cameroon, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Sierra Leone, just to mention a few. Now, it is estimated that they will require over $50 million to help these over 760,000 communities to meet their basic needs. And while they're still trying to reach out to these communities, now what would you advise these respective countries, what would you advise their governments to do? Because this is a very huge problem. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we are a growing population all over the world. We're not going to slow down because of this food insecurity. So what would you advise the governments as a short-term solution to combat this situation?
Okay, in the short run, there are many things that government and the people could do. You know, if the flood is there and they have been able to survive the flood, then the next thing is that the people should be encouraged to go back to the land. Okay, they should be encouraged to go back to the land. You know, the people have lost a lot of their inputs, a lot. So the starting point will be that seed with potential yield should be made available to these farmers. That's the starting point. We should look at seed being available. And if seed is available, all the other inputs that are required should be made available to these farmers. And that's where government could come in. Because if we leave that cost, every country has some kind of assistance or subsidy that is given to farmers in one way or the other. However, you know, in Nigeria, our ability to manage subsidy has been a problem. But there are ways of doing that. If subsidy is tied to maybe a guaranteed price, say, okay, in this area of flood, we're encouraging you to go, we're distributing seed, it's this cost, but you are not paying now. Just produce the food. At the end of it, we guarantee you that no crop produced from the field will be lost. We pay so much amount, and maybe the amount per unit will be more than what the market is paying. So farmers are encouraged. Even if I can't get this, if I can't sell in the market, I'll sell to government. And so the farmer will go. So if we have this kind of encouragement, and then let's also back them up with training and sensitization. It's very important. They are coming. Okay, this flood is receding. Maybe as the flood recedes, rainfall may not last for that long. So you need to now tell them, okay, you have only 2 months because you are using residual water from flood to be able to do this planting. So you prepare them for that. Then also, that's the point. It may not be short term. In the short term, the irrigation facilities should be revived immediately. It doesn't take anything to do this, you know, for a country as Nigeria. We revive the irrigation facilities that are already existing. Some have gone more, but in the long run, we have to rebuild and we have to construct new irrigation facilities so that this could be available to farmers. So if we look at those areas and many more, of course, if that happens, then farmers themselves, inputs should be made available at reasonable cost. You know, how do we do this? We have to remove taxes from major agricultural inputs. Remove taxes, remove the import duties, allow these things to reach, because that's your way of subsidy. But if you are going to do subsidy by distributing money, that is not subsidy because it's not easy to manage. People will divert it. It may not go to farm. So if we do all of this in the short run, then we look at the long run later on. Thank you.
Okay, yes, and thank you for that, Mr. Achimugu. Now, looking at this whole scenario, yes, a lot of, like you mentioned, sensitization is required, and the government needs to participate more in enlightening farmers as well, and also to create subsidies, like you said, also in terms of fertilization and distributing these seeds at perhaps at a free, it should be free at no
and
cost
crop
at all.
protection, so that
Yes,
drudgery can be reduced.
Also, now
You know drudgery?
no, can you please tell us what drudgery is all about?
Very good. You know, drudgery is the pain that the farmer receives on the farm. You can see our old farmers, when they are growing old, they begin to bend because of the hard work on the farm. This technology is available that reduces that hard work. I mean, that
Stress of having
that's
to
stress,
bend their
not
back.
hard work. That's stress to the barest minimum. That's
So
what.
more mechanized farming is needed.
Yes. You see, adopting technology, mechanizing the farm. In fact, then you can use some little machines. There are machines that even at our own as developing economy as we are, machines are developed that could aid the farmers. Not necessarily the big machines that are used on American farms, but you have small harvesters, you have small plow which you can pull by hand. And of course, where the animal-driven plows are available, we can increase them, and train people on how to use them. Okay.
Now, how do we ensure sustainable food production practices? What would you suggest? Your opinion on this, please?
Very good. You see, when you are talking about sustainable agriculture, sustainable farm practices, we have talked about so many things. A lot of shocks that come into agricultural production. You have the global price shock, which I've mentioned. You have the climate volatility, which also is a shock. And then you have insecurity, which is also a shock. So how do we manage all this so that we can do? What then I will encourage and what I will say is everybody in the agricultural sector, including government, we should look at providing systems that are resilient to shocks. Okay? Systems that are resilient to shocks. And that comes to all the things that are involved in production, and also in harvesting, also in preserving post-harvest. We should also look at where do we store these things? How do we store? How are the silos? Who is managing? Okay, government can go into private partnership to manage silos in Nigeria. Okay, so that we can have enough food bank. Even when the shocks will come, the food bank, like it is now, we've gone through flood, we're supposed to distribute food, but we are not having enough. So we can do that, develop technologies like we talked about, seed that will help farmers. Then also ability to tell the farmers the readings from climatic variations, like you talked about the meteorological department. Those things could help, but somebody needs to help them with that information and break it down to usable information. Then you are looking at, we talked about the available farm inputs. We have to look at the environment. A lot of the climate shocks are coming from issues of abuse of the environment, okay? So farm practices that will help the environment, not that will create problems for the environment. In other words, like we are talking about a lot of warming of the system that is making the sea levels to rise, causing the flood. So every farmer in his own small place can contribute to that. Reduce bush burning, for example. Okay? It's not necessary. Those things you are burning can become part of fertilizer for the plot. If you can do them, if you can dry them and you can lay them on the ground and then cover them up, then you can become humus, compost that can be used for the crop.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, these are very key pointers to take to ensure that we have sustainable food production practices. Now, looking at our whole situation, yes, like you mentioned, this global price shock is not just affecting Nigeria, it's affecting countries all over the world. Now, you are the president of CropLife Nigeria, it's an NGO. Now, what is the role of international cooperation in addressing these food security issues? Because I know you have branches of CropLife all over the world. So I just want you to share your thoughts on this international cooperation in addressing these food security issues. What is their role?
Oh, definitely. At the CropLife International interacts a lot with food and agricultural organization, which is also an arm of United Nations, all right? So they stay at the advisory level so that that's what I talked about, sharing our experiences. Because we relate with farmers all over the world, we know what their problems are firsthand. We share these problems, and then we can also give advice to policymakers, because a lot of these things have to do with policies. But also, when you talk about sharing, that is why you see the World Bank is talking about money that will be made available. Grants are given to countries, and so when we share with them this information you're hearing about Ethiopia and all this, it's gathered by World Bank from many organizations, including people like us who are working on the field, because we put information from various countries on the global flow of information, and it's tapped. So we do that, and then we continue to partner. Like in Nigeria, for example, I've told you about the partnership. We also partner with a lot of non-governmental organizations who are funding this. And then also we talk with government on daily basis. Federal Ministry of Agriculture is one of our greatest. They also don't regulate us, but they also, we give inputs to them. So we discuss with them. We do training with them. That's what we do to be able to affect or reduce the shock of global security in food.
Okay, yes, so more according to Mr. David Achimugu, yes, there is a lot of cooperation between our government and these NGOs to ensure that the shock of this global price volatility is addressed, and especially considering the people who are the most important, who have been affected by this, and their needs are addressed short term. So let's take a break now. When we return, we'll also talk about food inflation in Nigeria and how we can mitigate this crisis. Join us after the break. Thank you for watching the program. I am still your host, Lovina Emah, and we are discussing with the guest in the studio, Mr. David Achimugu, the president of CropLife Nigeria, and we are discussing how to explore the opportunities in global food security. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. David Achimugu.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's great you're here in the studio with us. Now, we've discussed the challenges with food security, how technology can help to solve these issues, and also work more enlightenment and more education needs to be given to farmers, particularly those in the rural areas. Now, there's something which is affecting us here in Nigeria, and that's the food inflation. Now, as of August 2024, we already have food prices have increased. That's the domestic or local food have increased by over 37.5%. Now, this surge has strained household incomes, and it is making it very difficult for low-income families to afford basic food items. So how do we remedy this situation?
Oh, that's a tough one, because that is the problem that is facing the country. I think for me, that's number one problem. Being a player in the agricultural sector. If we look at what then are the factors, if we are looking at food inflation, what are the factors that are causing or the ember of food inflation in Nigeria? The very first one I'll mention is insecurity. I can assure you that from our experience and our interaction and the work we are doing on various fields and various ecological regions of Nigeria, it's not limited to just one zone or one ecological zone. Everywhere in Nigeria, there are pockets of effect of insecurity on farm production. And of course, if you are talking of inflation, it's a question of demand and supply. If the supply is not there, the demand goes up, and then prices will go up, isn't it? So you find that insecurity is major, and we as a country have to look at this. What then creates the insecurity? What is also firing the insecurity is the fact that there is a lot of rural-urban migration. There is the people left in the farm are aging, and their productivity is going down, and young people who are supposed to take over from them have moved to town because we have imbalanced development. Okay? The rural area, development in the rural area has to really be attended to if we are going to reduce insecurity. So that's one aspect. And if you talk about rural development, you are talking about we have to look at rural roads as, a lot of people think, what has road got to do with agricultural production? It's quite a lot if you take the statistics. Because the rural roads, the man has to have access to his farm. If he produces, he has to have access to the market. Rural roads will be the link in doing this. And because these things are not available, then the young ones are not, they can't do things the way the old people had done. So they migrate from the rural areas to the farm. So insecurity is very important, and we have to look at many ways of mitigating that. We also have in the past in Nigeria, okay, we had things like forest guards. We have these people, there was government at the rural level. But now, there is really little or no government at the rural level. So the farmers are left on their own, and insecurity is creating a lot of issues. So I've just talked about insecurity now. The other one, when you are talking of inflation, is the energy cost. The energy cost, the cost of production itself, and the cost of moving the products from the farm to where it's sold. You can't imagine it that if you go to where Irish potato is being produced majorly in Plateau area, in Plateau State and the surrounding states. If you go there, the price of Irish potato you will get there, if you come to Lagos, is about twice or more. And everything is about energy cost. But not only on energy cost. The farm produce are multitasked. What I mean there is that they tax every local government you move food from to the other. You pay one form of tax or the other. All these things go into the cost. So when we talk about IGR, we say, okay, we want to increase internally generated revenue. Yes, at what cost? At the cost of inflation? No. Then we should take a look at it. So policymakers should look at these things. When I heard the other day an agency of government saying that, okay, we are going to look at the prices, the price at the farmhouse in Plateau, I'm talking of Irish potato, for example, and the price in Lagos is too much. What they should be looking at, take an inventory, take a data of how much it costs transportation, how much it costs to pay multi-taxes along the road to local government, to this agency, to that agency. And by the time it arrives in Lagos, the cost is a lot. So we have to intentionally look at agriculture and agricultural produce. So these are some of the things. We can go on and on. There are a few of them.
Yes, I know we can, but there's so much to discuss, and we need to make good use of our time.
Okay.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Looking at these issues now, yes, solutions to it. The government, I'm quite sure you advise that the government should totally, if it's possible, eliminate tax on this farm produce, and energy is something that is deeply affecting everybody, not just farmers. So it's something that I would say discussions are still on how to solve the energy cost issues, and also, but the rural and urban migration, like you mentioned, if it is solved adequately, there is more development in the rural areas. I don't think the young people there will definitely migrate to the city. They will definitely
our search for improving security, yes, we really need to look at rural development.
Yes, that's
we really look at it.
Now, how can local farmers and businesses access these global markets?
In terms of export, that's where you are going. Yes, in
terms of exports, yes.
I think a lot has been done in that area, but we still have, we are still at the starting block, because there is so much still to be done. How can they access? First of all, we have to start by producing quality products that will match export. There are export standards, okay? How then do we do that? That's where we talk about reviving the agricultural extension system. Because for us to do that, there is what we call GAP, which is good agricultural practices or good agronomic practices. Okay, we have to intensify, because when we talk about rejection of goods when we export them, it starts right from the beginning, right from the farm itself. Okay, if what is to be used on the field is used on produce in the house, then there's a problem. In the warehouse, then there's a problem. So all of these mean that there are gaps in our between technology and information available and getting it in practice to the farmers. So that's why we need to actually do much more in gap training. Okay, we call it good agricultural or good agronomic practices on the farm. That's where it starts from. Once we can get that right, it will reduce a lot of problems. Because, in CropLife, that's what we are doing. A lot of the training we are doing also, I didn't say, is with NAFDAC. Okay, because we are also training farmers, not only farmers, we are also training grain merchants in various locations in Nigeria on what to do. For example, the technology in pesticide, the one available for field is different from the one available for harvested products. Okay? In other words, what you are using for corn in the field is not tailored for using for grain corn in the warehouses.
So how do they know the difference between?
It's all education. Every bit of the product you pick has full information on what to do. But again, if the information is in English, we also have information in various languages. But somebody needs to, this information, the way it is, has to be reduced into little bits for understanding of these people. So education is still needed. Extension is needed. The greatest gap in agriculture in Nigeria is the gap between technology and practices. And if we can reduce this, then we would have solved a lot of problems, Yeah, go ahead.
We would have solved a lot of problems in terms of bridging this gap, because that's very wide. Technology and practice, those are two very wide gaps. Yeah. Now, looking at, you mentioned also how there is need for more education, enlightenment, but looking at investments, and you also talked about public-private partnership, which is also key. But now, what investments are needed to support these emerging markets in the agricultural sector?
Fine. The challenges that we have been talking about, they create then opportunities for job creation. So they create opportunities for technologies to be brought in. So if for example, you look at podding the field with a small plow, for example, and somebody invests in manufacturing that thing locally so that we don't spend a lot of our foreign exchange importing them. We have most of the things that are needed, okay? And so there are opportunities that are available in job creation if we begin to do the right thing, if the policies are right, okay? So we have to look at the right policies for job creation, the partnership. Engine room driving every economy in the world is in the private sector. So government has to look, scout and welcome investors. How do they do that? They have to look at things in agriculture. The investment in agriculture is different from investment in oil and gas, for example. Okay, because this is rural economy, this is affecting a lot of people. And then for food security of Nigeria, you need to allow this investment to flow in. So we have to look at taxes. There are multiple taxes in Nigeria. Many agencies.
Taxes on who exactly now?
Taxes on inputs, taxes on, if you want to invest in any productive activity in Nigeria, if it comes to agriculture, you are paying almost the same thing as somebody who is investing in tools that are used in the oil and gas, for example. It's not the same, because in this one you are looking at farming, you are looking at agriculture, you are looking at what is the end product of what is coming out. So government supports every creates, what do I call, the environment, the macroeconomic environment for investors to come into agriculture. We have to intentionally make it favorable for investment in agriculture if we want food security to blossom.
Okay, I like the fact that I used that phrase. We have to be intentional about it. Yes. Okay, now I'm looking at this whole thing. Let's just speak briefly, just before we round up the program. How can food waste reduction strategies impact global food security?
Oh, for sure. Like I said, it's an aggregate of total global wastage. So if you are wasting 50% in Nigeria, and somebody is maybe wasting 15%, the global wastage will be 15 plus 50 divided by 2. So you now find out that the global wastage is somewhere around 35, 30 something. You understand? So that's exactly what we are saying. And therefore, that's why the world, in terms of agriculture, is looked at from the eye as a single entity, because what is affecting farmers here is also going to affect the availability of food for the whole world. I don't know whether you get it. So if we're then looking at so the experiences and the technologies that are available in people who are having wastages of 15% should now begin to share those experiences and those
so they should learn from
resources. They should learn from those countries and those resources with countries that are far below. Okay.
Okay, briefly, I'm sorry to pause, cut you in there. But briefly, please, could you just tell us what policy reforms can support sustainable agricultural practices? What policy reforms do you recommend our government to do to support sustainable agricultural practices?
Yeah, the is to look at in the agricultural sector, what policy reforms, a lot. How can we migrate our farmers, for example, from planting grain to planting seed? As small as that is, how can we do that? Is by reviving the extension system. One, encouraging the research institutes and those that make seed available. Then two, making the knowledge that seed is available to the farmers. So we need to close the gap. One, we need to invest in technology. Then we need to close the gap between the user farmer and where the technology is, so that it will be available,
Thank you so much, Mr. David Achimugu, the president of CropLife Nigeria, for sharing your insights into how we could tap into the opportunities in global food security. And you've said a whole lot, particularly how we might consider it a challenge, but this is an avenue to create more jobs, especially in the technology sector, in helping our farmers, especially in the rural areas, to tap into this challenge. And also the government can also create more mechanized farming tools, and more young people will look at farming as a very lucrative option. Many thanks for joining us this morning on Markets Insight. It's been so great having you on the program, and I do hope you could come to our studios again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, now let's look at the money markets this morning for Tuesday, 15th October 2024. We're looking at the Central Bank of Nigeria rates and the parallel market rates. So this morning, at the CBN rates, the dollar is currently selling at 1,657 naira to $1. At the parallel market rate, it is selling for 1,700 naira to $1. And the parallel market figures for the dollars is quite high. It's not the difference of it's quite high, 1,7 to 1,657. And for the pound sterling, the Central Bank of Nigeria rate is 2,111 naira to £1 at the parallel market. It is 2,270 naira to £1, and the parallel market figures are also higher than the CBN figures. For the euro, it is 1,818 naira to €1. That's the CBN rate. At the parallel market, it's 1,870 naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. Thank you so much for watching the program Market Insights as we discuss opportunities in global food security, how to solve these challenges, and how the government needs to engage the private sector to actually combat these food security challenges. I also want to thank my guest, Mr. David Achimugu, for sharing his insights into this discussion. Thank you so much for watching the program Market Insights. I am your host, Lovina Emah. Do stay tuned to the news updates on Souk News Television.